Welcome to Animeverse Fanfics, a world where your favorite anime characters step into new adventures. Here we bring fanfictions to life through voice, animation, and imagination. This is just the beginning, let's write a new chapter together. And now, let's begin our very first journey. Today's story is titled, Another Me I Haven't Met. Chapter 1, First Meeting. Is the seal ready? Yup, are you sure? Do you not trust me, darling? The Uchiha sighed, only trying to make sure you don't blow yourself up. Naruto smiled cheekily. Sounds to me like you're worried. Tisich as if. He rolled his eyes to emphasize that point. Naruto softened, I'll be fine. I'm not exactly weak, you know. He stepped close to his husband, giving him a kiss on the cheek. Sasuke's arms snaked around his waist, and he pressed their foreheads together. I know, dope. I just don't want anything bad to happen to you. I'll be fine, team. Just remember that Kushina is allergic to mushrooms and Minato can't stand dash. His husband's lips cut him off. He melted into the kiss and definitely didn't whine when the kiss was broken. I think you forget that they are my kids too. A kiss. And I'm well aware that Minato can't stand carrots. Naruto opened his mouth. Yes. I haven't forgotten that Hima is allergic to tree nuts. Naruto smiled softly. I'm sorry. It's just, I'm not used to being so far away from the kids. Never mind that we don't even know how long I'll be gone. Sasuke cupped his husband's cheek. It's not like you have to go. The blonde smiled. If we ally ourselves with another universe, we will be stronger, we might even be able to bring everlasting peace. Sasuke sighed, dropping the hand back to his side. I'm not going to change your mind, am I? Then rolled his eyes at the blinding smile he got in return. Nope. Naruto opened his eyes. Shut them. Gosh, when did the world get so bright? He groaned. Why was he outside? Where was Sasuke? Then it hit him. Naruto sat bolt upright, immediately regretting it when the wave of nausea flowed over him. Curling up slightly, he sat on his knees, willing his strength to return to him. If he was where he thought he was, then he would need to be prepared for anything. Breathing slowly, his eyes once again opened, now focusing on the terrain that surrounded him. It seemed he was in a training ground, at least that meant he was near some form of village or civilization. He rose to his feet, checking for injuries and trying to stay calm. Did it actually work? Shikamaru would never let Naruto live it down if he had only managed to teleport to his own training grounds. Kurama. Did we actually make it? Ugh, shut up. I'm still dizzy as hell. People without the Rinnegan aren't supposed to dimension hop. When have we ever followed the rules? We're rebels. Are you done acting like a child? The blonde considered this. If I stop acting like a child, will you stop acting like an old man? Brat. But yes, we are in a different dimension. A familiar one too, if the chakra signals behind you are anything to go by. Naruto spun, immediately coming face to face with three very familiar strangers. The one in the middle was almost identical to his son, almost. His eyes were both a striking blue and his hair was just a little too short. While the one on the right looked exactly like Sarada, but with glasses and, once again, the hair was too short. It reminded Naruto of when his kids were still babies. He felt his chest lighten at the thought of his little ankle biters running around with their siblings. Old sap. Shut it, the one on the end was just Mitsuki. There was not a single thing that differentiated the kid from the one he was familiar with. Freaky. Who the hell are you and why do you look like my dad? The tiny yellow one yelled, identically to the way Naruto used to, still does according to Sasuke. That's a difficult question to answer. Could you maybe tell me who your Hokage is? Naruto asked. If this kid inherited his energy, then he definitely didn't want to provoke him. Keeping a low profile for the time being was a good idea. Naruto felt proud. He had a plan. Shikamaru would be so impressed. When he looked back up at the teens, they were looking at him as if he was stupid, except the Mitsuki kid who has yet to react to anything, though the girl was trying to hide it. Which rude. True but rude. They all just looked at each other for a moment. No one knowing what to say. Kurama, help. Your body, your problem, brat. Naruto cleared his throat. Did I say something? He tried to flash his brightest smile to hopefully reassure them that he isn't crazy. Or a threat to them. The girl leaned towards the yellow one in the middle and whispered something into his ear. Thanks to his sensitive ears he was able to hear what she said. Should we alert someone? Maybe get the Umbu over here. Damn it. This was not going according to plan. Shikamaru would not be impressed. The yellow one seemed to consider this idea before whispering back. We'll take him to my dad. He should be able to do something, or at least Uncle Shikamaru will. The girl seemed like she wanted to hit him for that. A chill went down Naruto's spine at the similarity between her and Sakura. On the bright side, at least he was getting what he wanted. The yellow kid looked back to him. My dad is the Hokage, I'll take you to him. He promptly turned around and began walking away, the others following behind him. It was clear that this wasn't a request and that he was expected to follow. Fine by him. Naruto was just glad that the Mitsuki lookalike wasn't staring at him anymore. It freaked him out. What the hell was going on? All Boruto wanted to do was get some extra training so that he could impress Sasuke-sensei when he got back from his mission. Admittedly, that plan had started going downhill when Sarada and Mitsuki appeared and insisted on joining. That wasn't pleasant. But that plan just nosedived all the way into hell when we got blinded by a bright light, rushed into the training ground and came face to face with Dad. Boruto froze for a second. He was about to say something along the lines of why that old man was here, when the stranger turned around. He was shorter than Boruto's dad, not by much though. His hair was also very long, tied into a plait that went down to his waist. He just seemed smaller in general, the shoulders weren't as broad and his waist was tiny. But his face, it was nearly the same as Dad. The cheekbones were slightly different, but it was undeniably his dad. That couldn't be right though. If it was his dad, he would have said something by now. This person just stood there and scanned them, seemingly a cross between nervous, calculating and excited. Who the hell are you and why do you look like my dad? The stranger seemed taken off guard by the outburst and now looked wary. Good. Boruto had no idea how strong this guy was and need to stay in control of the situation for as long as he possibly could. Maybe it was some foreigner trying to pass as his dad in order to get something. Then the stranger spoke. That's a difficult question to answer. Could you maybe tell me who your Hokage is? What? Boruto could practically feel the shock radiating off Sarada and Mitsuki, and he knew that they could probably feel the same from him. Everyone knew about his dad because everybody knew about the Fourth Shinobi War and everything his dad had done to achieve peace. Is why everyone looked at the loser like he was a god. The idea that this person doesn't know any of that is beyond unsettling. Definitely not a foreigner then, even if you lived forever away from Konoha. Everyone knew the stories. Everyone stood and stared for a moment. Before the stranger spoke again, did I say something? Boruto felt Sarada lean towards him and ask if they should alert Umbu. That was probably the sensible thing to do. But something just didn't feel right. His dad was awful, but surely even he would know what to do in this situation. At least Uncle Shikamaru would. He told Sarada his plan, knowing that Mitsuki had overheard him as well. Then told the stranger that they were going to the Hokage. Boruto didn't wait for an answer before turning on his heels and starting towards the tower. At least the stranger didn't look like they were about to attack. They mostly stuck to the less populated streets in an attempt to avoid attracting unnecessary attention. But that became unavoidable when they got into the Hokage Tower and immediately ran into Uncle Shikamaru. At least this wasn't their problem anymore. The trip through the village didn't take long. Naruto was thankful for that. He was practically buzzing with excitement. Now that he wasn't panicking over the kids that looked adorably like his own, he had allowed himself to get excited about his plan somehow working. Ahead of schedule as well. At this rate, he'll be cuddled on the couch surrounded by his family in no time. Maybe plans weren't so overrated after all. They got to the Hokage Tower, at least he thought it was. It looked like it was, but then again, this is an unfamiliar universe. This could be the dungeons for all he knew. Naruto was a stranger to these kids. Ugh, why is interdimensional travel so hard? Because you're stupid. No, you're stupid. They entered the building and immediately ran into a guy who looked just like Shikamaru, but with a beard. Naruto didn't like the beard. Made him look old. Which made him feel like a baby. Which felt very weird. Old Shikamaru paused at the sight of them. He looked slowly over the four of them, his eyes lingering on Naruto the longest. What are you kids doing? And who is this with you? The girl spoke, cutting off the blonde before he could speak. Apologies for the disturbance, but we were going to do some training when this stranger appeared in a beam of light. He asked us about who the Hokage was, so we brought him here. Oh my gosh, she was so respectful, it was actually cute. It was now impossible for Naruto to not compare her to his baby. They were practically the same. Old Shikamaru seemed to think over that information for a second. Then he turned to Naruto. And who are you? He gave him a blinding smile. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Chapter 2, The Plan. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. The tension in the room skyrocketed as everybody stared at Naruto. Old Shikamaru was the first to snap out of whatever spell the four of them had been put under and raised a single eyebrow. Uzumaki. Naruto brightened. Yup. But it's not my full last name, just the shortened version that everyone uses. The three kids were staring at him in horror, Yellow Kid, shock and wonder in equal measures, the girl, and indifference, Mitsuki clone. He was starting to wonder if he perhaps should have gotten old Shikamaru alone before divulging that piece of information. Knowing that ponytail princess, he's probably already figured out where you're from. I'm telling him you said that, and of course he did. He's the smart one. Go ahead, he can't do SHT to me. And everyone is the smart one compared to you, can it, furball? When Naruto focused back on old Shikamaru, he was speaking. You do of course realize that we will have to test your BLD to prove your claims, yes. He sighed but also nodded. I expected as much. They all went and visited the hospital to get his BLD tested, even the kids for some reason. Naruto suspected that it was because old Shikamaru was more focused on him at the moment, if the Umbu squad keeping an eye on him were anything to go by. Naruto sat back and allowed this Sakura, who in his opinion should have kept her hair long like Sakura, to draw his BLD like a good little guinea pig, and was just a little offended by the shock on everybody's faces when his identity was confirmed. The Yellow Kid seemed especially shocked. That's the old man. Naruto took a second to remind himself that this was not his kid, as to not hit the little brat for calling him old. His Boruto wouldn't even try that if he liked living. Thankfully the girl hit him. Be respectful, you idiot. Old Shikamaru took this moment to dismiss the children and thank Sakura for doing the BLD test, Naruto doing the same, and got a guarded but friendly smile in return. Progress. Before they both left for the Hokage Tower again. So, you're from a different universe then. Old Shikamaru relaxed quite a bit once Naruto's identity was proved. That means that him and Shikamaru are probably friends here too. Yeah. My universe is great, I love it there. Old Shikamaru raised the eyebrow. Then why are you here? Naruto smiled even wider, a feat only possible if you're Naruto of some description. Partly because I was curious to how other universes are different to my own, and mostly because I wanted to ally others with us. Think about it. If we have allies in other universes, we could actually move to create everlasting peace. Naruto knew that he was bouncing up and down due to the excitement from the idea of it and knew that it was drawing some attention from the others in the building, but he couldn't help it. Old Shikamaru only looked fondly exasperated. I should have seen that coming from another Naruto. They arrived outside the Hokage door and entered. Sitting at the desk was Naruto's other version. And this guy was a powerhouse. Strong shoulders, muscled and tall. But by God, that hair needed work. It was truly appalling. At least he was able to stop himself from laughing due to the years of looking at his kids' drawings of him and Sasuke. He looked up at them and Naruto was momentarily taken aback by his eye bags. How long has it been since he slept? Looks like other you is also a self-sacrificing moron. I'm not that bad. Whatever you say, idiot. He brightened when he saw us. And Naruto finally understood what people meant when they said that his smile was infectious. It was impossible to not reflect his energy. So, you're the other me that Sheik has been talking about? He babbled with a gesture to his computer. It's so cool to finally meet you. You too. I was starting to wonder if I'd ever get to meet you. With that, Naruto sat back behind his desk and gestured that his other version sits opposite. He did. So, what brings you all the way over here? Naruto asked, clearly more than a little worried for the state of Naruto's world. He decided that it would probably be best to cut straight to the point. Well, I was thinking that maybe we could ally our dimensions. Naruto perked up at the idea, excited but fairly wary as well. Naruto couldn't blame him. He'd also be hesitant to accept if their roles were reversed. It's a fantastic idea. However, and I don't mean this in an offensive way, I don't really know nor trust anyone from your universe. That was fair. He had expected that much. He probably should have planned for it too. Naruto knew that to accomplish an alliance on this sort of scale, he would need to do something big. They would only trust him if he showed that he trusted them. It needed to hit close to home and mean something to both sides. His mind flashed back to the Yellow Kid and he had his lightbulb moment. What if, the attention of both occupants in the room snapped to him, I allowed 2 of my children to stay here for a little while? That shocked both of them. They were likely thinking about how he could possibly think this was a good idea. As a sign of goodwill and trust, I'm allowing you to keep something that is very dear to me. I can't and won't move against you in any way while you have 2 of my most precious people with you. Both seemed to be warming to the idea a little, but Naruto could tell that they needed another push. It will also give us the opportunity to meet up more, so that we can actually build some trust without having to use each other's children as bargaining chips. Naruto beamed at the other 2, hoping that they would at least be willing to give it a shot. They looked at each other. Old Shikamaru was still suspicious, but Naruto seemed to be on board with the plan. Naruto won the silent standoff. That sounds like a good idea to me. How long would your kids stay here? Naruto pondered it. Well, I trust them to be responsible, but I wouldn't want to leave them too long for fear of imposing. Naruto opened his mouth, likely to assure him that they wouldn't be an imposition. See? Self-sacrificing. It's called being nice, Kurama. Maybe you should try it sometime. Kurama huffed and Naruto continued before he could be cut off. So I feel about 5 days to a week should be sufficient. And then I can pick them up afterwards. Naruto considered this. We would need to be able to communicate with you in a moment's notice, in case of an emergency. And how old are your kids? Communication shouldn't be a problem. I will be monitoring my kids' chakra, and they are both able to communicate with me if anything goes wrong. And both are 14, they're twins. The other two in the room looked surprised. Naruto paused, slightly put off by their reactions to his children's ages. How different are our universes? If the chakra I sense from the kids is correct, then you don't want to know. I'll take your word for it. He started again slowly. And we need to figure out where they would be staying. Naruto shrugged. There's a spare bedroom in my house, they could stay with us, if they don't mind sharing, that is. That shouldn't be a problem, they're typically well behaved, unless they're sparring. Then all good behavior goes out the window. Naruto chuckled at that. Keep them away from training unless supervised. Got it? Then I believe we're all settled, Naruto said as he stood up. His counterpart did the same. Yup. Oh, and what are their names? Naruto beamed. Boruto and Menma. Then he pushed some of his chakra into his seal and was gone. Chapter 3. Family Ties. Naruto was, for lack of a better word, flabbergasted. He had been quite taken aback when he learned of his counterpart's existence and mostly unsure of how to move forward. Which is why he was immensely glad that he still had a bit of time before him and Shikamaru arrived, and Kurama was being no help whatsoever. I told you that I sensed some weird chakra signatures. You didn't tell me that there would be another me. That's because I wasn't sure. They were being very careful to not leave chakra signatures behind. You still noticed them though. And you could have mentioned that another me would pop up. Of course I noticed them, I'm amazing. Also, the reason I said that the chakra signatures were weird was because they're almost identical to ours. You should have said that then. Naruto could practically feel Kurama scoff. He hadn't known what to expect when they had entered his office, but it definitely wasn't that. The other Naruto had long hair and not just a little bit long, really long. On top of that he was shorter and much leaner than he himself was. He looked almost feminine. Either way, he had been thrilled by Naruto's idea for peace, if a little disappointed that he didn't come up with it first. But when he had mentioned allowing 2 of his kids to stay over, he has more than 2 kids. Naruto just didn't know how to react. The thought of sending Boruto and Himawari to a completely unfamiliar universe was terrifying. He didn't need to look to know that Shikamaru was thinking the same thing. But, he admits, he warmed to the idea rather quickly after that. It was a good way to show trust, and it definitely would open many doors for more chances to meet up and establish a sturdier relationship. That content feeling vanished when he learned of the kids' ages. Naruto had thought that he had become a father younger than it is generally recommended, but this other Naruto had beaten him by 2 years. His chest, however, did lighten when he heard that Boruto's counterpart would be one of the children coming over. It would be interesting to see how different that Boruto was to his own. And he was a twin. Naruto couldn't help but wonder what Boruto's twin would be like. Are they identical? Do they act similarly or are they opposite? Hell, does Boruto even act the way he does here? Naruto immediately went to both Kakashi-sensei and Granny Tsunade, explaining to them what was happening and convincing them to take his workload for the time being so that he could focus on building an interdimensional friendship. Just the thought of it made him giddy with excitement. Afterwards he went home to talk to his family. Hinata was a bit worried about having 2 more kids to look after, but was alright with it once Naruto had explained that he would be there too. Himawari was beyond excited at the idea of having other universe siblings. Naruto was pretty sure that wasn't how it worked, but he didn't care at that moment, and couldn't wait to meet them the next day. Now came the harder part. Boruto. It'll be fine. Naruto knocked on his door and entered once he got permission. Boruto at first seemed shocked that he was even there, which, fair. But then went straight to being angry. Finally decided to show up. Boruto, I can't be here all the time. The village is dash, he rolled his eyes. Yeah. Your responsibility. I know. Why are you here? As I understand it, you met the other me today. Boruto nodded slowly, undoubtedly wondering where this was going. Yeah, what about it? Well, we are attempting to build an alliance between our two universes. And? He asked, clearly uninterested. And two of his kids will be staying here for a little while to build trust between us. His head snapped to Naruto. What? Then he seemed to think for a moment. Do you know anything about them? Naruto nodded, sitting down beside Boruto. Yes, I know that they are twins and that they are 2 years older than you. Boruto frowned at that, probably because he's not used to being the younger one. But the main reason that I'm telling you his is because one of them is you in that universe. His eyes widened. Another me. Naruto nodded, and I am taking the week off so that I can help your mother look after all of you and keep an eye on them. He nodded. That all? Back to this then. Yes. Boruto gestured to the door and Naruto left. That kid pisses me off sometimes. He's my son, Kurama. You say that as if it will make me change my mind. Naruto rolled his eyes and headed to bed. Something told him that he would want to be well rested for tomorrow's events. When Naruto got home, he was immediately tackled to the floor. Mama? He laughed, kissing Kushina, Hima, and Mikoto on the forehead. Then stood up, taking all three of them with him, much to their screeches of delight. As they made their way to the kitchen. Come on, gremlins. Let's get some dinner on the go. After cooking dinner with the help of the gremlins and Kawaki's actual help, he called everyone down, all of them giving him a hug. Except Minato. Sasuke seemed beyond relieved that he was back, if the kiss and thank God muttered against his lips was anything to go by. Naruto indulged him for a moment before breaking the kiss and discreetly pulling him to the side, while the kids were preoccupied with dishing up. Where's Minato? I already fed him and sent him to bed early. Naruto frowned at that. Why? Was he feeling sick or something? Not exactly, I was training the kids today and he overworked his Sharingan a little. After catching Naruto's concerned look, he added, it's just mildly irritated, don't worry, he'll be feeling better by tomorrow and should be good to use his Sharingan freely after a day or two. Naruto nodded. Okay then, but I might stop by him later and heal him a bit. Sasuke didn't protest, probably because he hated seeing his kids in pain just as much as Naruto did. With that, they both rejoined their children for dinner. Dinner was loud like always. And it made Naruto feel complete, like always. Once dinner was finished, the bedtime fiasco started. Naruto chased Himawari, Mikoto and Kushina all through the house, while trying to wrestle them into their jammies. Naruto and Ayano doing their best to convince Sasuke that they deserved their bedtime to be moved an hour later because they had done well in training. From the bits of conversation that Naruto caught from underneath his 3 hellions, they weren't succeeding. Once they were tucked in and snoring, Naruto once again swung by the triplets' room. He knelt by the side of Minato's bed and placed a hand on his forehead. Thankfully, Sasuke was right and it was only slightly strained. Even so, Naruto inserted a bit of his chakra to heal the damage. He bent down and kissed Minato on the head and left the room as quietly as he entered, lest he wake the other two. Having finished with all other important matters, Naruto called down Menma and Boruto. He sat them down on the living room couch opposite him and explained what they would be doing for the next few days. They took it pretty well, all things considered. He suspected it was mostly them wanting to get away with murder now that Naruto wasn't there to keep them in check. Brats. They're going to drive the other you nuts. Don't be ridiculous, they're angels as long as they aren't fighting. That's because they fear you. The other Naruto was pretty soft on his kid. These little demons will tear them apart. I have faith that they won't be nuisances. I do agree with the soft part though. You have more faith than chakra. That doesn't surprise me. Yeah. It's my faith that brought us together after all. Kurama huffed, not dignifying that with a response. But, I need you two to do something for me dash. The twins leaned forward from where they were slumped and gave him their full attention. Don't tell them who your father is. Both looked confused at that. Can we ask why, Mama? Boruto inquired quietly, likely assuming it was something sensitive. It's nothing bad. It's just that I married someone different in that universe and my counterpart didn't mention Sasuke at all. I'm worried that something may have happened between them, and I don't want any of that possible animosity to be projected onto the two of you. Kurama had explained earlier that the Boruto of that universe was part Hyuga on the way home. The odds of him being wrong about some sort of feud between Naruto and Sasuke tearing them apart were pretty high, but Naruto is not willing to bet his children's safety on it. He's also really bad at maths and calculating odds in general. The twins seemed to accept this answer and assured him that no one would find out about it. Naruto thanked them, giving both of them a tight hug and sending them off to their rooms to pack. Tomorrow was a big day. Chapter 4. The Twins, Day 1. Menma, Boruto and Naruto were in the living room of their house. They had told the whole family about their trip that morning. Thankfully there weren't any hard feelings. Most were already used to their siblings being away from home for a bit because of missions. But even so, Boruto and Menma were buried beneath all of their siblings before long, Ayano and Naruto making them promise to train together when they got back. Once their siblings had been sent to school, they gave their father a hug, positioning themselves so that each of them were hugging one side of Sasuke. The latter squeezing both of them tight, while reminding them to not do anything too stupid while him and Naruto weren't there to drag them out of whatever trouble they caused. He only got reluctant half-promises in return but took it and said goodbye with a final squeeze. Now that Naruto had them alone, he started giving off a few more last-minute instructions. I want you to both be on your absolute best behavior, treat whoever you're living with as you would treat me. He gave the twins an extra stern look with that particular rule, feeling satisfied when they both cowered slightly. But don't forget to have some fun too, this isn't a mission. And I want you two to prioritize your safety above all else. If you think you're in any danger, call me over and I'll bring you two right back. Naruto waited until he got a nod and smile from Boruto and an enthusiastic thumbs up from Menma. Naruto sighed and opened his arms in invitation. Barely a second passed before he had his babies in his arms. He gently wrapped his arms around both of them, taking a moment to wish he could stay with them. He pressed a kiss to each of their heads, then moved back slightly. He looked at his kids, taking in the mismatched eyes that were so familiar in them that it made his heart swell. Look after each other. And remember that I love you forever, no matter what happens or what you do. Naruto said with a soft smile. Love you too, Mama. Come the reply from the Munchkins. Alright, you guys have everything you'll need. They both nodded. Then let's go. Naruto was waiting in the training grounds where they last showed up with Boruto. He had tried to strike up some conversation but had been shut down almost immediately. He was beginning to doubt whether they were coming at all when there was a bright flash. He shielded his eyes slightly, caught off guard by the explosion of light. When the light faded away, Naruto and two teenagers, each carrying backpacks, were making their way to them. He stepped forward, meeting them halfway, and was about to try going for a handshake when he was pulled into a hug from the other Naruto. After a second of shock, he hugged back, once again a bit thrown off by his smaller figure. He hadn't thought they were that close, but he wasn't complaining. The more friendly they were, the higher chance of this alliance working. Also, having friends in another dimension was so cool. When they separated, they exchanged a few greetings. Afterwards, Naruto turned his attention to the two teens. These are Boruto and Menma. Yup. Naruto guided them both forward slightly. Both of the teens moving in sync towards him. The first thing he noticed was their mismatched eyes that seemed to pin him in place, assessing every aspect of him, most likely trying to determine if he was friend or foe. Naruto could work with that. Do you two have everything that you might need? Are there any allergies or health conditions that I should be aware of? Nope, came the reply from the black-haired one, while the yellow-haired kid, which he is going to guess is Boruto, just shook his head. Alright, now that introductions are all out of the way, I'll be leaving you all to it. Naruto chirped, hugging both of his kids and mumbling a love you to each of them before disappearing. They're much closer to each other than Naruto's family. That much is obvious. Do you have to be such a downer all the time? It's in the job description. Both of the kids looked at Boruto, who seemed to also be staring them down in return. This is my eldest, Boruto. Naruto said while gesturing to Boruto. He looks kinda young though. Menma said with a frown. Yeah. How old is he? Boruto added. Naruto was about to answer when Boruto took the lead, cutting him off in the process. I'm 12 and more than capable of speaking for myself. Boruto glared at all of them emphatically. This seemed to stun both of the twins. Menma regained his composure first and started gushing about how cute Boruto was, ignoring Boruto's protests and indignation. Anyway, let's head back so I can show you your room and get you settled. Naruto beamed, trying to change the subject before things started to get more heated. He was not losing this opportunity because of Boruto's temper. They walked back to the house in near silence. The only sounds came from Boruto and Menma whispering to each other. Naruto tried to listen in, but they were too far away and would stop taking if anyone got close enough to overhear them. Naruto was starting to get the impression that they're hiding something. Once they reached Naruto's house, they were greeted at the door by Hinata. This seemed to catch both kids off guard a little. Menma was the first to make a move. Naruto was starting to think that he did that a lot. Hello, oh dash, he was abruptly cut off by Boruto's elbow meeting his ribs. Menma turned to glare at Boruto but dropped it nearly instantly, The twins stared at each other for a moment. Naruto was about to try start up conversation again when Boruto spoke up. "Good morning, ma'am. My name is Boruto and this is my twin Menma," he said while gesturing to his twin and bowing slightly. "How would you like us to refer to you?" That was decidedly not what Naruto expected. This Boruto seemed to be much more well-behaved than his own son. He could tell that Hinata wasn't expecting it either, but she didn't show it, perfectly maintaining her small smile. "It's lovely to meet the both of you. I hope that we can get along over the next week. And please call me Hinata. You can relax the formalities as well. I want you two to feel at home here." The twins smiled and everyone headed inside the house. Hinata told Boruto to show the twins to where they were staying and the kids left. Naruto turned to Hinata. "Odd bunch those two." Hinata blinked. "I suppose I was a bit taken off guard by Boruto elbowing Menma, but I wouldn't exactly call them odd." Naruto sighed. "It's not just that. Since those two arrived they have been whispering to each other non-stop. It makes me think that they are hiding something. They're probably just nervous about being so far from home." "Yeah." Naruto sighed. "You're probably right." Boruto nodded at his mom and started walking towards the guest bedroom, hyper-aware of the two following behind him. They were not what he expected. He never thought that someone who was essentially him would be so quiet. Part of him wanted to start up a conversation but he wasn't quite sure if that would be a good idea, mostly because he was still mad at Menma for calling him cute. When they reached the bedroom, Boruto stepped back and watched them look around for a bit. They seemed to have a staring contest before Menma slumped and Boruto smirked, taking the side of the bed closest to the window. It was confusing. They seemed to have conversations with each other without even speaking. It was impossible to keep up or find a place to join in. Boruto couldn't get any kind of information on them. He didn't understand them. He didn't trust them. With that, he turned and left. Menma waited until he sensed Boruto's chakra leaving the room, before turning to his brother. "Thanks for that," said Menma. Boruto smirked. "You won't be thanking me when I break your rib one day." Menma scoffed. "As if I'd ever let you get that far. You got pretty far into almost giving away that Auntie Hinata isn't our mom." Menma groaned. "I know, well, I just didn't think it would be this hard to hide who our papa is." Boruto nodded. He hadn't thought it would be this hard either. Regardless of slight changes in appearance, she was still an aunt in his mind. They would have to be careful not to mess up. Boruto straightened, catching Menma doing the same in the corner of his eye. Someone was coming. The door opened and Hinata stepped in. "Hello, boys. I just wanted to let you know that there isn't anything that you'll be expected to do today, so you can just focus on settling in. I will call you for lunch and dinner." "Thank you." The twins chirped back in unison. Hinata nodded and left. The twins sat on the floor, getting close to avoid speaking too loudly. "Boruto." "Yeah." "What did you think about Boruto?" Menma cringed as soon as he had finished speaking. "That's not going to work. I'll just call you Boru and the other one Boruto." Boru sighed but nodded. "To answer your question, he seems pretty standoffish and aggressive." Menma nodded his agreement. "Yeah, I think he is going to be the most difficult to hide from." "Agreed, we'll just have to be extra careful when he is around." The twins got up and started unpacking. This was going to be an interesting few days. About an hour later, once the twins had finished unpacking, Hinata had called them down for lunch. They made their way downstairs to the dining room, not too fazed by the unfamiliar house. Theirs was much bigger and harder to navigate. When they arrived, they saw the whole family already seated, including two new but familiar faces. Everyone looked at them when they entered the room, and a small girl who looked like Hima but with violet hair ran up to them. "Hi." She beamed at them. "I'm Himawari. Are you two my other universe siblings?" Boruto and Menma shared a smile. She was just as cheerful as their Hima. Menma beamed right back at her, matching her energy. "Hey Himawari. My name is Menma and this is my twin Boruto," he chirped with a gesture in his twin's direction, "and we'd be absolutely honored to be your other universe siblings." Himawari visibly perked up at that, throwing herself in Menma's arms and recounting the day's events at lightning speed. Menma caught her and lifted her into his arms effortlessly, which seemed to only delight the girl even more. But Boruto, who was paying more attention to the other occupants of the room, noticed Boruto and the Kawaki look-alike tense when Menma touched Himawari. Boruto considered telling Menma to back off a bit, but Naruto and Hinata didn't seem to mind. In fact, they looked rather pleased with the quick friendship. Suddenly, Boruto got a feeling that he was being observed and turned to face the Kawaki look-alike who was looking at him very intensely. They stared at each other for a moment, sizing each other up. It was making the rest of the room, bar Himawari, a little nervous. especially Menma, who shifted closer to Boruto while keeping the conversation with Himawari going, with a practiced ease that only came from years of experience with younger siblings. Unwilling to cause a scene or make an enemy on the first day, Boruto decided to try being blunt and respectful. He walked up to the Kawaki lookalike and extended his hand while saying, "I'm Boruto, that's Menma." "You are." He looked at the outstretched hand before taking it in a firm grip and answering, "Kawaki. Do you have something else you'd like to be called?" Calling the both of you Boruto could get confusing quickly. Boruto smiled. "Just call me Boru." He nodded. Now that introductions were finished, they were directed to the 2 remaining empty seats by Hinata, who seemed to be relieved that a fight hadn't broken out. Everyone dished up. The twins attempted to wait until everyone else had gone first before getting their share, out of respect. But Naruto shut it down quickly and made them get food before him. Boruto and Menma shared a smile. Even in another universe, Mama was still taking care of them. After everyone had seated themselves again, they dug in. Everyone was quite quiet for a bit, but then Himawari started bombarding the twins with questions. "Do you guys like it here so far?" It was clear that the question was asked more out of politeness than anything, which only served to make Boruto both nervous and excited for when the real questions would start being asked. A glance in Menma's direction showed that he had also picked up on it, though he didn't seem to be nervous for the impending interrogation at all. "Just excited. Idiot." "Well, we haven't really been here long, but so far it's been comfortable," Boruto answered, noticing how Naruto visibly relaxed. "Gosh, Mama was a real overthinker. What's your guys' universe like?" Everyone at the table started paying attention. This was the point where they would start needing to be careful with what information they divulge. "You'll have to be a bit more specific. We are talking about a whole universe here." Menma chuckled to make the question easier to answer. After all, they don't know anything about this universe outside of this house. Broad questions like that would only lead to them making mistakes. Himawari frowned slightly and seemed to think about it for a bit. "What about your family then? What are they like? Am I there too?" Boruto kicked Menma underneath the table, letting him know that Boruto would be answering this question. "Well, we do have a little sister and her name is also Himawari." Boruto couldn't help but chuckle slightly at the way Hima seemed to light up even more, if that was possible. "Really?" "Yeah. She looks a little different to you, but both of you are equally cheery and adorable." Everyone at the table seemed to smile at that. Hima's adorableness was a universally agreed upon fact. Boruto sighed a bit in relief. It seems that they managed to dodge the family question. Naruto then piped up. "Do you have any other siblings then? Your dad implied that there were a few of you." Menma was visibly confused by the question. "Our dad? Do you mean Dash?" Boruto cut him off. "Yes, Menma. Our dad." Menma stared at Boru for a second before it clicked. "Oh, yeah, sorry. Our dad?" He faced the rest of the table, who seemed incredibly confused. "My bad, we call him by a different name in our universe, so it took a second to realize who you were referring to." The group looked like they wanted to ask more questions, but Boruto quickly picked up the conversation before they made any more mistakes. "To answer your question, we do have more siblings than just us and Hima." Naruto raised an eyebrow, probably wondering why we were being so vague. "Really? How many?" Boruto and Menma looked at each other for a moment, weighing up their options. They could lie and make the pill a lot easier to swallow, but there is a high chance that the alliance will become a lot stronger, leading to the truth, and their lie being revealed. The twins looked around the table. Naruto looked curious, if slightly suspicious at their pause. Hinata seemed to be keeping her face open and kind, probably trying to encourage them. Boruto looked very suspicious, almost accusatory. Kawaki seemed to be rather indifferent with a tinge of interest. Hima just looked excited to hear their answer. The twins faced each other again. Mama was a powerful censor and they both knew it, different universe or not. If he was suspicious, then he was paying attention, and if he was paying attention, then he would catch them lying almost immediately. The truth it is then. Boruto sighed. "We have 8 siblings." Silence. More silence. God, why was it so silent? Then both Naruto and Hinata went bright red. Kawaki looked like he might faint. Boruto looked like they had just killed his puppy, with a healthy dose of confusion on the side. And Hima, well, Hima looked like all her birthdays had just come all at once. 8 siblings. Came Naruto's gobsmacked cry. Geez, you'd think that Boruto had just rewritten the universe by how everyone was reacting. Yup. 2 brothers, 6 sisters. I have sisters. Himawari squealed. I mean, kind of. Boruto wasn't entirely sure how family trees came into play across universes. Menma, however, was concerned about Hinata. She had gone completely red and seemed to have trouble comprehending anything. Not to mention drawing attention to her state would take the attention away from them, which would probably be the best idea as of right now. Hinata. Are you alright? Boruto immediately picked up on what he was doing and helped. Yeah, you seem really red, almost like you're about to faint or something. Naruto immediately jumped into action, helping her up and guiding her to their room for some rest, telling the kids to finish lunch and that he would take care of her. Once they left, Boruto immediately jumped at them. What the hell is wrong with you two? Boruto's expression went cold. Excuse me. Who do you think you are, coming in here and lying about your family to hurt my mom? First of all, we didn't lie, and secondly, we didn't intend to hurt your mom. She isn't even that hurt, just a little bit shocked. She'll be fine in a few minutes. Menma added, picking up where Boruto left off flawlessly. You actually expect me to believe that you have 8 siblings? How stupid do you think I am? Boruto only seemed to be getting increasingly angry, too preoccupied to notice that Kawaki was trying to subtly get his attention. Considering you're fighting us about the size of our family, which you've never even seen I think you're quite stupid. Boruto said while keeping his face as neutral as possible, knowing instinctually that Menma was doing the same thing. Getting angry is the quickest way to make a mistake. Stay calm and don't allow your feelings to overpower your brain. Mama Boruto went red. He was about to start spewing insults when Kawaki ditched subtlety and just yelled, Boruto. He immediately snapped his head to his older brother and noticed that he was holding a crying Himawari. The sight of his sister crying took all the wind out of his sails. He turned to glare at the twins before stomping out of the dining room. Boruto and Menma turned to the 2 siblings. Still in the room. Said siblings were already looking at them. Menma cleared his throat nervously. Sorry about that, guys. Kawaki just shook his head while still holding Himawari, who was now only sniffling. You only told us what we wanted you to, and Boruto is extremely hot-headed. None of that is your fault. Either way, Boruto interjected, you two can go and relax, we'll clear up the table and wash the dishes. Kawaki looked like he wanted to argue, but he looked at his sister and then at the twins. After seeing that neither of them was backing down, he sighed and picked Himawari up. Thank you, he said as he left the room. The twins shared another glance. Kawaki has always been an amazing sibling, even if he'd rather die than admit how much he cares. The twins knocked their foreheads together gently, smiling softly. They couldn't wait to go back to their family. Chapter 5. Naruto's trying you guys. Day 1. Isn't going to spontaneously die. The amount she fainted when embarrassed was not good for his heart. He shifted his focus to the raised voices that he had heard earlier, which probably explained the stomping footsteps that had made their way to Boruto's room. Naruto debated going and asking Boruto what happened but dismissed the thought quickly. If Boruto was angry, then that anger would just be projected onto him and that wouldn't get anyone anywhere. So, Naruto instead went to Kawaki's room, where he found Kawaki and Hima curled up together on the bed. As he entered the room and made his way to them, he quickly noticed that Hima's face was red and blotchy, as if she had just been crying. Hey guys. I heard a commotion, is everyone okay? He said, keeping his voice low and moving slowly as to not scare or provoke them. He sat on the bed and placed a hand on Hima's back, rubbing soothing circles as she began to talk. Boruto was shouting at Boru and Menma. Naruto's eyebrows raised in shock. He looked to Kawaki, hoping to get a more detailed version of what happened from him. Kawaki sighed. After the 2 of you left the room, Boruto accused them of making up stories to hurt Hinata. They defended themselves and I stopped Boruto before he could do too much damage and he stormed out. The twins said that they would clear up and me and Hima came up here. Naruto frowned. He knew that Boruto could be irrational and hot-headed, especially when it came to protecting his family, bar Naruto, but this was pushing it a bit too far. He sighed and got up. I'll talk to Boruto then check up on the twins. Thank you for stopping Boruto, Kawaki, he said as he ruffled the teen's hair. And thank you for being so brave, Hima, he said as he placed a kiss on her forehead. Kawaki blushed while Hima beamed. He left the room, satisfied that at least half of his kids were okay. Now Boruto. Oh boy. Good luck, kid. Much appreciated. Thank you. Naruto knocked on Boruto's door before entering. Typically he would wait for permission to enter, but he knew he wouldn't get it while Boruto was mad. Additionally, Naruto would usually wait for everything to calm down before trying to solve whatever problems had arisen, but he had to get all sides of the story while it was still fresh in everyone's minds. What are you doing here? The boy immediately snapped. Naruto sighed. I'm trying to figure out what happened just now and why I heard raised voices coming from the dining room. Boruto glared. You would know if you hadn't ditched us per usual? The last part was mumbled but Naruto had still heard it clearly. Why did Boruto have to turn everything Naruto did into some form of attack against him or the family? I'm not here to fight. I just want to know what happened. Boruto glared at him, but Naruto held his gaze sternly, not backing down. After a while, Boruto let out a huff of anger and started explaining his point of view. They made up a story that was obviously fake to hurt Mom. I defended her and then everyone started treating me like I was in the wrong. Naruto let the silence after Boruto had finished speaking stretch for a bit, before going in for more information. How did you know that they were lying? He asked, trying to keep his voice as calm as possible to avoid provoking Boruto further. Boruto's head snapped to him, eyes ablaze with fury. Damn it. What? You're taking their side too. Well, what did I expect? You're not much better than them. Boruto, that's not dash. You also make up a million excuses that hurt not only Mom but the rest of the family too. Not to mention, the only time you come home is when people from another dimension show up. It really shows where your priorities lie. Boruto. Huh? Or am I kidding? You're not just as bad as them, you're worse. This was really not going well. Naruto opened his mouth to try placating Boruto, but was, once again, cut off. Just leave. Go to the ones you actually care about. Boruto Go. Naruto exhaled sharply before leaving the room and closing the bedroom door behind him. He leaned against the wall opposite and closed his eyes. He breathed deeply, counting back from 10 while thinking of things that made him happy. Getting angry now wouldn't help anyone, and he needed to go check on the twins now. He desperately hoped that Boruto hadn't said anything too damaging. They were also just kids. Kids that have had to cope with being in a completely new dimension, around people that were likely extremely familiar yet undeniably different. There was not a single thing that they could draw comfort from. They were isolated from just about everything that wasn't each other. Naruto wished that Boruto could understand that, but Boruto tended to not notice anything outside of himself and his family when he got upset. Naruto, I love you and all, but that kid gets on my nerves. You and me both, Kurama. So can I kill him? No. Not even a little. No. And how do you kill someone a little? Extreme injury. Can I at least scare him? As much as I love that idea, he is a kid, Kurama, an annoying kid. He let out a small chuckle at Kurama's mumbled response. Feeling a lot calmer, Naruto made his way to the kitchen where he was shocked to find that the twins had almost finished clearing up and washing the dishes. Both twins had turned the second he entered the room. Decent censors. They both abandoned what they were doing immediately and gave Naruto their full attention. It was slightly unsettling. He wasn't used to kids around him being so attentive and obedient. So Naruto just smiled. Thank you both for clearing up. I hope you know that as guests, you shouldn't be the ones doing all the work. Boru and Menma seemed taken aback by that, glancing at one another before fixing their gazes on him again. Naruto found it quite incredible how they always seemed completely in tune with one another. It was like there was a wavelength or specific signal that only the two of them could pick up on. Naruto quickly found himself wishing that he had someone that he was this close to. Sasuke briefly popped into his head, but their relationship, while strong, didn't even come close to the twins. However, their reactions were more than a little unsettling. They looked like deer in headlights. Like they knew something bad was coming and were trying to prepare themselves for it. What in the world could have caused these kids to freeze up like this? Naruto's smile faded slightly, but he powered on, determined to prove to these kids that he wasn't someone that they needed to fear. Are both of you okay? Fighting in a place where you feel like the outsiders can't have been a pleasant experience. The twins stayed silent a moment longer before Menma hesitantly spoke up. Are you not upset with us? Naruto frowned a bit at the question. Why would I be upset at the two of you? We came into your home and within moments of our arrival, started a fight with one of your kids and caused the other to cry. It was Boru who spoke up that time. First of all, I have already talked to my kids and know for certain that you didn't start the fight. Secondly, Hima cried because of the fighting, not you two in particular. And thirdly, you both have been incredibly well behaved since the moment I met you, and I think the clean dishes behind you speak for themselves. The twins both seemed to relax a bit more after that. So, Naruto thought it was the perfect time to change the subject. What's it like having 8 siblings? You probably know, but I'm not really used to having a big family, so I can't even imagine what that would be like. Naruto's smile was right back on his face, as if he never even let it drop in the first place. The twins hesitated, but then Menma took over. It's really loud, chaotic, and there's almost always something going on. But it feels like you have a support structure over a mile wide. There is always someone who can step in and help you. You feel like you're always surrounded by love. And as older brothers, it often means that we get the chance to help Mama and Papa keep the family safe and be there for our siblings. We're so used to being around them that we find any silence weird. Boru added, a playful smile growing on his face towards the end. Naruto couldn't help but smile. It reminded him of himself and his friends. He knew that he could count on any of them and knew that they could count on him in return. Naruto couldn't deny the immense pride he felt at the knowledge that he was able to build that kind of home for his kids in that universe. That he was able to show them that kind of unconditional love that his friends had blessed him with over the years. He moved forward and ruffled the twins' hair, laughing a bit at their embarrassed faces. You two can go upstairs and relax, I'll finish up here. We'll let you know when dinner is ready. He got a nod from Boru and Menma and started towards the few remaining dishes as the twins moved to leave the room. At the last second, Boru popped his head back in. Naruto, could we maybe go explore a bit of the village tomorrow? Sure. There is a conjoint training of some of the genin happening tomorrow morning. You could join in that. It would also give them a chance to meet some of the other kids in this universe and make some friends. Hopefully that would help make this universe feel a little less isolating for them. Boru smiled back. We'd love to. See you at dinner. Naruto nodded and waved. You think we could convince the other Naruto to trade Boruto for the twins? Shut up, Kurama. Chapter 6, As She Goes Down. Even more so than before. Day 1, Boru was beyond relieved. He and Menma had thought that they were definitely screwed after that argument with Boruto, and how could they think any differently? Despite knowing that the argument itself was not their fault, they still caused a disturbance and upset the owners of the house, not to mention that they weren't familiar with this version of Mama at all. Thankfully, Naruto had made sure to get all sides of the story and had ensured that they knew they had nothing to be ashamed of. But Boru had to admit that this universe Boruto was really starting to tick him off. Who in their right mind calls someone a liar when they don't know anything about the topic of discussion? Boruto apparently. After the twins had gotten back to their room, they immediately set up some silencing seals, courtesy of Mama's lessons, and sat on Menma's side of the bed, legs crossed and facing each other. Boru started them off. So, we've finally met the whole family. Menma smiled. I don't know about you, but the fact that Hima is the exact same in both universes made my day. Boru cracked a grin. Best thing to happen today, hands down. Kawaki isn't much different either, just more withdrawn. Yeah, seems this one is still in the middle of working through his trauma and trust issues. Menma paused for a beat. If he even went through the same trauma as our brother. Seems that no one here has made much of an effort to help him if, of course, he is suffering with the same trauma as Kawaki. Menma nodded before hesitating, preparing to start a more delicate conversation. Is it just me or does Auntie Hinata seem a bit more, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, weak? We're twins, it's never just you. And yeah, she seems much quieter and doesn't seem to speak her mind or give input, unless it's with regards to her kids, much. Always nice to know we're on the same page. Boru gave a wink in return. Alright. On to the problem. Menma announced theatrically as if he were a game show host. Boru scoffed. Should I be offended that this version of me is a moronic, tantrum-throwing child? No offense to children, of course. Of course. But I wouldn't, he is his own person after all. And at least you have a counterpart. Anytime you'd like to SWs, you just let me know. Every time he opens his mouth, I get scared that Mama's going to appear out of nowhere and send me 6 feet under for the things he says. Menma shivered emphatically. You're right. I don't need that stress in my life. Think of the wrinkles it would give me. I hate to break it to you, but you already look like a raisin. Menma let out a huge and obviously fake gasp with his hand on his chest and all, before exclaiming, How dare you? I'll have you know that my skin is as smooth as silk. Also, we share the same face, so there. He ended his rant and stuck his tongue out at Boru. With a smirk, Boru lunged at Menma, trying to mess up his hair as much as he could while still protecting himself from his brother's enthusiastic counterattacks. They wrestled for the next few minutes before separating and calling a truce, both heads reduced to an unrecognizable mop. Afterwards, they both lay down on their stomachs on their bed, with Boru's laptop set up in front of them, reading together while definitely not kicking their feet. Safe to say the rest of the afternoon went by quite quickly. Author's note: I couldn't get the image of Boru and Menma reading the manhwa. Death is the only ending for the villainous and giggling like teenage girls when Callisto and Penelope were flirting while being half naked in the cave, so that's what I imagine them reading together in the above paragraph, but feel free to let me know what you think they would read together. When dinner time finally rolled around, Menma was beyond restless. He wasn't used to being cooped up. That was one of the few curses of having almost never-ending energy, which Papa claims comes from Mama. Boru has never really been like that though. Sure, he has quite a bit of energy and has a remarkable stamina, especially in a battle. It's part of what made him a good teammate, but like Papa, he can stay still or in confined spaces for long periods of time without feeling suffocated or claustrophobic. Of course Boru knew this too. Hence why he had been providing as many distractions for Menma as he could. One of these being a very heated debate over whether Mama was PRGN in T or not. Menma didn't think so, but Boru was adamant. Menma will never admit it, but by the end of Boru's rant about how Mama got morning sickness, Mama literally never gets sick, and had started spending more time around his kids, and Papa has been sticking closer to him, he was also convinced that Mama was most likely PRGN in T. Damn it. Why did Boru only give the evidence once Menma had already made his bet? Cheating, smug rat. But unfortunately, the boredom and need to run around in a more open space came creeping in. Menma had just begun to consider sneaking out for a quick jog or something when Naruto had knocked on their door and called them down for dinner. If Naruto was put off by the way Menma screamed yes, and nearly sprinted to the dining room, he was kind enough not to mention it. Not to Menma at least. Is he alright? Yeah, he just can't sit still. And was going crazy from being confined to a room that's too small to run around in. Naruto winced. Sorry about that. Probably should have thought about if you guys would be okay in there for so long. Boru just shrugged. And now you know. And we'll be doing some training exercises tomorrow, so he'll be fine. And if he's not, then I'll let you know. Seemingly satisfied with that answer, Naruto nodded for Boru to follow him downstairs. Menma slowed his pace before he entered the dining room, not wanting to burst in on what he knew could easily be a less than ideal situation. Coming into the room, he saw Kawaki, Hima, Boruto and Hinata in the room. He immediately went over to where she was laying out the food and offered his help, as an apology for earlier. Hinata smiled and let him help her to bring the remaining dishes into the room. Much to Boruto's displeasure, judging by the way he wouldn't stop glaring at Menma and Boru, once he had entered the room and offered his help as well. Everyone soon sat and began to eat. Menma had to try very hard not to fidget or move around, and he thinks he did a pretty good job, considering the holes that Boruto was trying his hardest to drill into his head. Naruto seemed to notice this too and tried to put a stop to it. Boruto, stop glaring at them. Shut up, old man. Menma fell off his chair and Boru choked. This drew the attention of the rest of the table. Hinata immediately asked if Menma was okay. She went to get up and help him, but he quickly got back into his chair and brushed off her concern. Boru had fully recovered and was now looking back and forth between Boruto and Naruto with thinly veiled horror. What's up with you two? Boruto snapped, trying to be accusatory but only managing to sound childish. Boru opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the table, then got up. I'm just going to go and breathe for a bit, it won't be long. And then he left. All eyes snapped to Menma. He was going to beat the SHT out of Boru for leaving him in this situation. Are you not going to say anything? Boruto snapped again, getting more and more agitated. Let's just say that if I looked him, our Naruto in the eyes and said that dash, he took a hissing breath through his teeth, I would be 6 feet under. There were various reactions in the room to that piece of information. Naruto looked extremely taken aback, Hinata looked confused, Hima was happily eating her dinner, having decided to mind her own business for the time being dash, Kawaki raised a singular eyebrow in skepticism, and Boruto. He just looked at Menma like he was spouting nonsense. Really? You actually expect me to believe that? Menma raised an eyebrow accepting the challenge. Boru snuck out once when he was about your age. He got out easy enough and had a good time, but when he got back, he found our Naruto waiting for him. Kawaki frowned and interrupted the story. You didn't cover for him. I did. I lasted 10 minutes before I was busted. Boruto again raised an eyebrow. What happened then? Hima asked while bouncing in her seat. Well, he was grounded for 3 months, no dessert for 1 month, and had to take care of one of our siblings' chores on top of his own. Isn't that a bit much? Naruto asked, Hinata nodding slightly from the side. Oh, I'm not done. I'm not sure what their conversation was about, but I do know that Boru to this day is dead terrified of sneaking out and has never made another attempt. Boruto frowned. So he's a wimp. Menma's face hardened and he glared at Boruto. He had been nothing but cheerful since he arrived, so that SWH made Boruto flinch back slightly. Never say that about my brother. He is one of the bravest people I have ever met. As if summoned, Boru entered the room just as Menma had finished speaking. He sat down next to his twin and resumed eating, prompting Menma to do the same. The others around the table stared for a moment longer, but once it was clear that the twins were done talking, they continued their dinner. Once everyone had finished their food, the twins attempted to clear away the plates but were quickly urged to leave it by Naruto and Hinata, who were determined to convince them that they were guests and not required to help around the house. Everyone left for their rooms shortly after, leaving Naruto and Hinata alone in the kitchen. Hinata glanced towards her husband, concern painting her delicate features. He had been unnaturally silent since the fight between Menma and Boruto. Typically, Naruto would have made some form of funny remark to break the tension, but whatever was bothering him caused him to retreat into himself. Which wasn't a good sign. "Naruto," Hinata called softly, "is everything all right?" Naruto opened and closed his mouth a few times, seeming to be unsure of how to articulate his thoughts. Hinata just continued to wash the plan she was holding, giving him time to sort through his thoughts and figure out what to say. After a minute he spoke up. "Hinata." She gave a hum in response. "Do you think those kids are being abused?" Hinata paused, putting down the pan and turned to face her husband. Said husband was lost in his own ramble however and didn't notice. "I mean, I don't want that to be the case, of course not. It's just, they're so private and whenever either of us speak to them, they're always extremely polite and obedient, almost robotic. And with what they just told us, punishment seems overly extreme in their house, and they always seem to be waiting for me to blame them for something or give them chores." Naruto abruptly stopped, apparently having run out of things to say. Hinata walked towards him and took his hand. "I don't think we should jump to any conclusions." Naruto opened his mouth, likely to argue further. He has always been very sensitive when it came to the mistreatment of children. "Please let me finish, Naruto." He closed his mouth and nodded. Hinata tipped her head slightly in thanks before continuing. "As I said, we shouldn't make these kinds of assumptions. For all we know, they could just be private kids. And impeccable manners aren't necessarily a bad thing. And they told us that they come from a crazily large family. I might be able to handle all the housework with 2 kids, but 9 is far too much. I wouldn't be surprised if the older kids in that house have quite a few chores to ensure the house runs smoothly." Naruto had gradually deflated over her speech and now just looked drained and defeated. Yeah, you're right. Sorry." Hinata only smiled and went in for a hug. Never apologize for caring. Chapter 7, Friends and Fights, Day 2. The sun began to lower itself down underneath the soft pillows spread across the horizon as the moon rose, preparing to watch over the village in the sun's absence. Boru watched all of this happen, allowing his eyes and body to rest as his mind scrambled. It was nights like these when Boru felt most like a child, for it was nights like these when the twins would once sneak into their parents' bedroom. Snuggling up to their parents as he watched the sunset through the floor-to-ceiling windows in their parents' bedroom, dozing off while either Mama or Papa idly played with his hair, his twin's hand in his. But they weren't home right now. In fact, they were further away from home than they had ever been before. Boru hated it. It was the one thing about being a ninja that he truly couldn't stand. Being away from his family, the people he loved most. He had his twin, of course he did. His twin being by his side was the one thing that he could always count on. Born together, lived together, died together. That was a pact they made as kids, one of the few that held strong to this day. But Boru's family was far more than just Menma, and he missed it. He felt tears prickling at the corners of his eyes and forced himself to think about his current situation. He would be back home with his family soon enough. "We need to come up with a plan for tomorrow." Menma turned to face Boru, expression confused. He had been trying very hard to ignore his twins sniffling to give him a bit of space, and the conversation starter came a little out of the blue. "What do you mean?" Boru rolled his eyes. Why did his twin have to be so stupid? Alas, he elaborated. "We'll be sparring tomorrow," he said, emphasizing the sparring part as if that would help Menma get it. And we have the Sharingan. You know, the red swirly thing in our eyes that only Uchihas have." And Menma got it. Mentally face-palming for taking years to get there. "Right. Would be a bit weird if they figured out that we had it." "Exactly. We need to decide how we'll go about keeping it a secret." Menma frowned, considering this. "I mean, we could always just not use it." Boru glowered and Menma let out a very attractive snort. "That would weaken us and put us more at risk." "Meaning you don't want to lose?" Boru glared at his twin, wishing he could set him on fire as said twin held his breath in an attempt to smother down his laughter. "It's more than just that." "Is it though?" "Obviously." Menma finally broke, wheezing at Boru's pouting face, but mentally conceded. After all, his twin wasn't the only competitive one. What if we could use our Sharingan without anyone noticing? Menma offered, once he was able to breathe again, ignoring the scathing glare coming from Boru's general direction. If you think that we won't be under heavy scrutiny from Naruto and at least 3 other jounin, then you're more stupid than I thought. Menma glared. Obviously I knew that BSTRD. I'm just saying that maybe we could like henge ourselves or something. That made Boru pause, finally dropping the glare. That could actually work. Menma beamed. Told you I wasn't stupid. Shut up, I said could. We'll need to be careful to only cast the henge over our eyes and only have it on when our Sharingan is active, to make it less noticeable. But even then, if someone looks at us with a Sharingan or Byakugan, then we're busted, and if we screw up our facial features even a little, then we're double busted. Menma shrugged, looking mostly unbothered. We've pulled off harder stunts. Plus, the only person from here with a Byakugan is Niji's kid and Hima, and I really doubt that Papa would have been able to have a kid with someone who isn't Mama. Both twins nodded at this. The only person that Papa really enjoyed spending time with was Mama. Even his friends, even though they were more Mama's friends, drained him emotionally. Neither could fathom Papa being able to deal with anyone else long enough to procreate and then raise the child. Also, Papa was completely and utterly down bad for Mama. Also, we could always just spend a few minutes memorizing our features with the Sharingan, so messing it up shouldn't be a problem. Menma added. Nodding his head, Boru finished off the plan. We should be alright with chakra as well, considering we got Mama's endless chakra. So long as we don't spar too many times, we should be alright. With that, the twins finished getting ready for bed and studied their faces in the mirror before heading to bed. They were going to need all the rest they could get. The next morning began with an early breakfast, a grumbling Boruto, when he realized the twins were coming, and an exasperated Naruto. The group were currently on their way to the training fields, just past the outskirts of the village in the forest that acted as a barrier from main village and the areas built for ninja to train and strengthen their skills. It was forests like these that earned the village its name, because they were grown by Senju Hashirama himself and because of their beauty. Menma couldn't help but breathe out all of the tension in his body with a drawn-out sigh as he admired the forest they were walking through. The chirping of the birds and the sunlight sprinkled along the path made for a perfect and serene environment. But they were here on a mission and had to focus on their companions' Minders. Menma shared a look with his twin and got a discreet nod in return. They might as well try to get whatever information they could. Naruto? Boru asked tentatively. It still felt so wrong addressing a version of Mama by their name. Yes, Boru. Who's going to be there? Naruto paused before adopting a more thoughtful expression. I'm not entirely sure, this is more of an optional event, so it really just depends on who wants the extra training. After a beat he added, Boruto would probably know more than me. Both twins turned their attention to Boruto, who scowled at all of them. But after Naruto gave him a stern look, he huffed and mumbled out their answer. If I had to guess, Samaire, Metal Lee, Nara, Yamanaka, Akimichi, Mitsuki, and of course Uchiha. Both twins froze, turning to look at each other with wide eyes. The Uzumakis also stopped, looking at them in confusion. Boru turned back to his other self, feeling a bit like he couldn't breathe, and asked, Uchiha. Yeah, Uchiha Sarada. The twins froze again. Sarada. But then if not Mama, then who? It was a while before Menma was able to stutter out a question. Who is her mother? Naruto frowned in concern. Sakura. Sakura Harino. Why? Before Boru could do anything to stop him, Menma had already opened his stupid mouth. Isn't Auntie Sakura a lesbian? Author's note. I am well aware that Sakura is not a lesbian, but the twins grew up in a world where she only ever had eyes for her wife, so they just assumed. Also drama. Naruto and Boruto looked stunned for a moment, gaping like fish. Boruto seemed to gain his composure before his father. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Before Boruto could turn this into a screaming match and gain the attention of the whole village, Naruto put a hand over his mouth and ended the conversation. We'll talk more about that later. For now we should just get to the training grounds and focus on training for the time being. All the kids nodded, even if Boruto looked like he wanted to start yelling at his father instead. The rest of the walk passed in near silence, the only exception to that were the twins. And that's the end of today's tale, but the journey doesn't stop here. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to join our anime universe, comment your thoughts or the next story you'd love to hear, and share this with a fellow fanfic lover. Until the next chapter, stay inspired. Whispering to each other, being careful not to allow anyone else to hear them. They could see that it was starting to bother Naruto. It had been bugging Boruto for a while already, but the twins didn't much care about him. When they got to the training grounds, Boruto immediately broke off to go to his friends. The twins were about to follow when they were stopped by Naruto and guided to a shaded area where some adults were conversing quietly, though all conversation halted when they arrived. In the group, the twins could recognize Konohamaru and Hanabi. But the other two's identities weren't very hard to discern. One of them looked identical to Uncle Shikamaru, with the exception of that horrific goatee. Seriously, it made him look so old. Boru heard Menma muffle a snort to his left and smirked, knowing that his twin was thinking the same thing. The last adult was also pretty easy to guess. You don't see that shade of pink hair often. Auntie Sakura. Her hair was much too short, but it was definitely her. The twins shared a mournful look. She was probably one of the last people they wanted to see right now. Why did the sage hate them? Naruto approached and greeted each of them warmly, with a hug in the case of Sakura and Konohamaru. As the attention of the adults shifted to the twins, Naruto introduced them. These two are the kids from the other dimension that I told you about. The blonde one is Boruto, we just call him Boru, and the one with black hair is Menma. Naruto explained as he gestured to each of them respectfully. Menma gave an enthusiastic hi. In return, while Boruto just settled for a wave. The adult returned their own greetings and Naruto picked up the conversation again. Konohamaru and Hanabi are here to supervise and will be looking over the spars and giving corrections. It's technically Sakura's day off, but she volunteered to be our medic, should things get a little rough. And Shikamaru and I are just here to spectate. The twins nodded in understanding, then turned their attention to Konohamaru as he spoke up. As I understand it, both of you are 16. With confirmations from both kids, he continued. Should I assume that you have also been trained from quite a young age? Both twins once again agreed, distantly aware of the singular focus Shikamaru was regarding them with. Wonderful. That means I don't have to worry about you two getting your asses kicked. However, you may or may not know that both of you are a good 2 years older than everyone else. So, please be mindful of the fact that they may not be as advanced as you. We have no interest in killing one of the babies, don't worry. Menma chirped back, lightening the mood. Konohamaru smiled at them. Well, I think that covers just about everything. Not quite. Hanabi butted in politely, nodding at Konohamaru slightly as he moved aside to give her the stage. It is quite obvious that we know basically nothing about the two of you. I just wanted to ask if there are any clan jutsus, bloodline abilities or anything like that, that we should know about. The twins shared a glance. Boru, taking the lead, answered for the both of them. Nope. Just plain old Uzumakis unless you want details on our chakra pools. That earned them an indignant hey from Naruto's general area, which gained a variety of amused sounds from those gathered. Well then, Hanabi continued with a smile, you two can make your way over to the others and get introductions out of the way while we figure out which pairs we want to see spar. Both twins nodded and took their leave, making their way over to where the genin were standing. Konohamaru, Shika. Both men gave their Hokage their full attention, while keeping their bodies in the same position as before, acting as if a conversation wasn't taking place. What's up? Konohamaru replied quietly, matching Naruto's volume, and keeping the movement of his mouth to a minimum. Keep an eye on the twins, it might just be me being paranoid, but I can't shake the feeling that they're hiding something. Anything in particular? Shika pressed. Naruto shook his head minutely. Possible trauma, but it feels like there is a lot more. Konohamaru frowned and nodded before rejoining a conversation with Hanabi regarding the pairs. The only sign of recognition Shika gave was a vaguely surprised look. Naruto sighed. Hopefully today went smoothly. As the twins approached the group, the conversations drew to an abrupt halt. All the genin staring at the twins with varying degrees of wariness, shock, and curiosity. The twins took advantage of the pause and surveyed them, learning what they could from their appearance. Shikadai, Inogen and Chaochu weren't exactly a surprise. They were just younger versions of the Ino Shikacho from their universe, so it was fair to assume, in Menma's humble opinion, that they had the same parents in both universes. Thank Kami. There were only so many surprises the twins could deal with from this strange universe. Mitsuki was the exact same, which is something that Boru took great comfort in. Menma just found it weird and kind of creepy, but whatever. Samaya was here too. Both twins were a little taken aback by that. They knew who she was part of their graduating class after all. But she had never really been that close to anyone in the group. Though the twins saw that there were several people that were missing in comparison to the twins' universe, so Boru just figured it was the universe's way of filling in the gaps. Metal Lee was mostly the same apart from one small but extremely important detail. The hair clip that his dad, Gaara, gave him is gone. Typically this is detail that is too insignificant for the twins to notice, but both twins could remember 2 weeks after the Chunin exams when he had lost the clip and went into no fewer than 5 panic attacks before he, and the team dedicated to helping him, found it. It was the reason that no one touched the clip. They even made sure that their attacks during sparring didn't get anywhere close to it. Everyone knew how important that clip was to Lee. But what did its absence mean? Did it mean that Lee also has different parents here? What if he had to grow up an orphan like Boru knew his pops, Rock Lee, did? Metal Lee squirmed uncomfortably under Boru's stare, so he shelved those thoughts and moved on to the others present. The twins breezed over Boruto and landed on the one person they were dreading to acknowledge, Sarada. Their adorable, gorgeous, and scarily intelligent little sister, who wasn't even their sister here. She looked different. Her hair was far too short. Their sister had always prided herself on having hair as long and appealing as Mama's, but this Sarada didn't. She had glasses too, weird, but the twins could get over that. The thing that the twins couldn't get over, the thing that made both of their hearts ache, was the lack of recognition in her eyes. The blatant distrust present in every tense muscle that made her. That's what undoubtedly hurt the worst. The silence dragged on a bit longer. It was making everyone pretty uncomfortable by this point, but no one quite knew how to break it. Then Chaochu broke it. "Demon, if Boruto is going to look like that one day, then we should keep him around," she said playfully, jokingly looking Boru up and down. The remaining tension dissipated at the sound at everyone's chuckles, Boruto letting out an indignant, "Hey." Once the chuckles died down a bit, Inogen spoke up. "If you don't mind, could you?" And that's the end of today's tale, but the journey doesn't stop here. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to join our anime universe. Comment your thoughts or the next story you'd love to hear, and share this with a fellow fanfic lover. Until the next chapter, stay inspired.